Howdy, folks. Greyhawk 4x4 coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer, and we have once again reached another Beer 30. Cheers, or Prost, I should say. If you're asking, the beer tonight is just another one of my Newcastle brown ales, which one of my favorite beers. We've gone over that before, so don't need to go into a lot of detail there. It's a classic brown ale, English brown ale, and it's one of my favorites. I didn't want to spend too much time on that because I got a lot of stuff to cover here in this particular episode of Beer 30. Let's just say that I hope you're having something, some delicious adult beverage or so. If not, your soda, tea, coffee, whatever. And we got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's start off with the topic of the Steam Deck. The handheld Steam console that's portable, that allows you to play from your Steam library on the go and all that. I read an article today that says that you can drain the battery on the Steam Deck in about 90 minutes if you don't cap your frames per second. Now you have that, and then you have the sheer size of it, and you can go on and Google and see the comparisons with the size of it next to the Switch and all these things. I have no real interest in that type of product. Not where I am in my life. I like being home with my gaming rig, sitting at the computer, doing my thing. I do have my laptop back there that if I travel, that I can take with me. I can access my Steam library there. I can manage my Steam library, whatever I need. I can manage my Steam library from my phone if I want to. But as far as playing games, when I'm away from home, I'm not generally thinking about playing video games. I'm doing whatever it is, whether it's I'm traveling and I want to see the sights and so forth. Maybe you get back to the hotel after you've done some sightseeing or whatever it is that you're doing. You've gone to a convention, whatever it is. Then maybe, yeah, you could sit and, doodle a little bit on the laptop or whatever. But it just doesn't, it's not something that interests me. Now, having said that, if I was, the Steam Deck, of course, would appeal to me because I love Steam. I'm wearing that was not on purpose either. I just happen to be wearing my Half-Life 2 hat, it's from Valve. And, so if I were somebody that wanted to game mobile, then yeah, I would love that. The size of it and the battery life, would be issues, but I don't know that it would bother me that much. I'd be interested to know how you guys feel about those two particular issues. The heft of it, having to carry that thing around, and then the battery life, and whether if you don't, cap your frame rate and so forth. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. Second thing, this is a big one in the tabletop role-playing game community. So you may or may not know, there are the whole history of TSR that put out the old Dungeons and Dragons, the original Dungeons and Dragons. Here's some of the old books, right? So they got bought out. Well, everybody knows they got bought out by Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro. Wizards of the Coast is the one who puts out D&D now, has been putting out D&D for quite some time. But a while back, a few years back, somebody else got the trademark for TSR as the trademark because it had lapsed or whatever. That person, Jason Elliott, I ended up working with Jason on what is now known as TSR 2, because that was like the second iteration, and we put out a game called New World Order, Top Secret New World Order, And you guys know all that stuff. Then Jason, and whether it was by accident or by on purpose, and I think it was more or less on purpose, because he had planned to get away from the TSR name, because he just didn't want to have to deal with any legal battles or any complications of any type. And so he has since, when he let it lapse, he started up Solarian Games. So now the old TSR2 is still producing stuff for Top Secret New World Order and other stuff under the name Solarian. So at that point, somebody else, another guy, picks up the trademark and starts TSR3, which is the one that, and they're in a big legal battle with Wizards of the Coast because they're wanting to make Star Frontiers, a new version of Star Frontiers, and they're using the old logos, and they're being sued by Wizards of the Coast, and it's a whole kerfuffle, right? So while all that kerfuffle is going on, some of the people that were associated with that TSR3, broke away and started something called Wonderfilled Games. Now, Wonderfilled Games has put out a game now. They put out a game called Giant Lands, and it's expensive. It's $129 for the base game, and it's $199 if you want a signed copy. So it's actually out. It is. You can go on YouTube and you can see unboxings and all that. I did not order it for various reasons. I didn't want anything to do with TSR3 and or Wonderfilled. I don't need to go into a bunch of detail about why, but I just didn't want to be involved. So now, and that's not saying I won't at some point maybe pick up Giant Lands if there's some reason that a bunch of my friends somehow got it or something and said, hey, we're playing this, and I decided, okay, I'll give it a shot, then maybe. But for now, I'm just kind of staying back from the whole thing. Well, what happened is, a couple days ago, somebody from Wonderfilled put out a tweet saying something about join us live with Jim Ward, who's answering questions. And Jim Ward, if you don't know, was one of the old school guys from the old original TSR. There's his name right there. James Ward, right there. One of my favorite hardbacks right there, the Greyhawk Adventures hardback book. He also was the main author, I believe, on Deities and Demigods. And this is an extra. I have mine put away safely that has the Cthulhu and Melibonian mythos, which were only in the first printing or what, first couple of printings, and then they had to take them out, or they agreed to take them out. This one also has it in it, but this is one I got from a collection, and it is in rough shape, but it is nevertheless one of the original ones. But anyway, so yeah, this one was credited, James Ward and Robert Kuntz, who's another one of the old school original guys from TSR. So Jim Ward's pedigree is very strong. He was, when I say, if I use the term one of the original old school guys from TSR, or gals, because there were both guys and gals that were involved. If I say that, I will use the term guys as a unisex term, meaning anybody that was an old school person with TSR going forward, so you understand. So his pedigree is strong. Now, when they put out this tweet from Wonderfilled, they mistakenly, however, they're not backing down, they mistakenly credited him in the tweet as the co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons. That is false. He is not a co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons. He worked on a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff with all the old school guys. Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson, Frank Mentzner, people whose names are escaping me right now. He worked with all of them, helped put out all these products and so forth. but he's not a co-creator. Well, Wonderfilled got called on it many times in responses, saying he's not a co-creator, you can't say that. They're doing it to sell games, and it's false. I'm not taking anything away from Jim Ward, because I've met Jim Ward a couple of times at GaryCon, and as a matter of fact, he was nice enough to sign this copy of my book at GaryCon 2017. So, and he was a fan. He is a nice guy. When I met him, he couldn't have been nicer, and he was gracious and signed my book. Great guy. But that's a false. That's a false claim on the part of Wonderfilled. Got to take a swig here. When you have to talk nonstop, the mouth gets dry sometimes. So the kerfuffle is continuing now. And when they were called on it, when Wonderfilled was called on it, they did not acquiesce. They did not capitulate. They doubled down and basically said, they stood by their comment and said, that, well, he was so instrumental that Dungeons and Dragons wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for Jim Ward. Okay, let's compartmentalize again. I love to use that word. Deities and Demigods, the original, is one of the, more instrumental gaming aids for the game, for tabletop role playing, because it introduced this whole pantheon of all these different deities, demigods, heroes, of legend and lore, and which it was later titled Legend and Lore, which they changed the title. And something like this, Greyhawk Adventures, along with a slew of other stuff he's done. So yes, it may not be what it is today. It may not have evolved the way it did if it wasn't for Jim Ward, but that doesn't make him a co-creator. The creators of Dungeons and Dragons, it's very well established. Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, they created the game. Period. That's it. Now, you could argue that to get to the point when they put out the game, created it and put it out, that there were people that were involved, like David Wesley, who basically came up with the idea of role-playing in a fantasy setting in his game Braunstein, which he showed to Dave Arneson, and then Dave Arneson showed it to Gary Gygax and said, hey, check this out. And that's when Gary Gygax said, well, what if we create XYZ? Dave Arneson said, well, yeah, I've got a campaign I'm working on called Blackmore. Gary said, I got a campaign called Greyhawk. They put out a game. Okay? But it was Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson that did it. Jim Ward was not a co-creator. So regardless, the saga, I'm gonna wrap this up here. The saga of TSR 3 and Wonderfilled, after they kind of split ways, but they're both I want to make sure I use my words properly here. They are both conducting themselves as companies in ways that are less than reputable. They should not be misrepresenting anything. They should be embracing the community of Dungeons and Dragons, of old school Dungeons and Dragons, new Dungeons and Dragons, all of it, and trying to promote a atmosphere of good games put out by good people that people can have a lot of fun with. And I just don't feel that either one of them, or they're hurting the whole community when they do the things that they do, like misrepresenting somebody as with a credit that they're not. They're not a co-creator. Jim Ward's not a co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons, so don't credit him that way. You could have said it a zillion different ways. You could have said one of the most innovative or important game creators in tabletop role-playing history. You could have you could have done all different sorts of ways of describing his accolades and his pedigree, but co-creator of the game is not true. So anyway, let me know how you guys feel about that topic, because if you go on you can go on to any of the different forums or Twitter or anywhere else, and you can see all the bullshit going back and forth between the old school nerds like me and the people at Wonderfilled. And Jim himself, he responded, and you could tell he was taken aback by the statement that they made. And you can tell in his response, he doesn't really know. I can tell he feels like he's between a rock and a hard place right now. Because, he's invested with these people creatively and probably monetarily, whatever else, And they said this thing about him. I don't know if he had any idea they were going to do that, but it's not a comfortable. You talk about awkward. Anyway, just let me know how you guys feel about that. Now, let's talk about a couple other things here real quick. We'll wrap this up. America's Army, the video game, America's Army. Has a soft place in my heart, a special place in my heart, because I'm an Army veteran. When America's Army, the video game, came out, I remember jumping onto it. Me and my buddy John both jumped onto it because we were big into first-person shooters at that time. And here comes this, America's Army. I'm like, shit, I'm in. And it's put out by the U.S. Army? Holy crap. And it was put out legit as a recruitment tool to get people recruited into the Army. And it was free. So we'd jump on there, and I remember, I'll never forget, it's one of my favorite gaming memories, because I remember that one of the first things you do is you're going through the simulation, like for basic training type thing, and they have you go out in game. Your first person perspective. You're a soldier in basic training, and they have you go out to the firing line with your weapon. And yeah, you don't call it a gun. It's not. It's a weapon. It's a weapon or a rifle. And so they have you go out there with your weapon, and they have you start qualifying for marksmanship, just like in actual basic training. And it was fucking dead on, man. Exactly how it felt to be in basic training, out there on the firing line, firing at pop-up targets as far away as 300 yards, and having them pop up, and you're having to hit, 40 out of 40 would be perfect, and X amount is sharpshooter and marksman and expert and all this. And it was just like I was back in basic training, except I'm doing it in a video game. I'll never forget that. It was a fantastic feeling to be able to do that simulated, and so they did that. They got that perfect, and I played it off and on for a long time. It's been through a bunch of different iterations now, I guess. And the news is that it's shutting down. It's shutting down May 5th permanently. Now, the good news is there are private servers, and I don't think they have any designs about making them shut down or anything like that. It sounds like they're going to allow the private servers to continue. There's a design kit for people that want to create levels and whatever, So it sounds like the community can continue, and which is a good thing. But it's the end of an era. It's like 20 years ago. It's been like 20 years since that game came out. So I don't know if any of you guys ever played it, but it was actually a very good experience. So, and then the last thing that I want to talk about, and I've talked about this many times, is the good old-fashioned Intellivision Amico. And I say good old-fashioned because it's been in development, it feels like, forever now. And those of us that put money out for a Founders Edition, we were patient. We're like, we got it. COVID happened. The supply chain shit happened. We get it. We know. It's tough out there, man. It's tough on everything, Look at the PlayStation, chip shortages and all that. We get it, And we've been patient, and we've been patient, and we've been patient, and we've been patient. And then a while back, there was some kind of something that went out on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere that said that they were looking for more investors or something. And I got on to the official Facebook page or whatever, and I said, hey, it's time for you guys to make an announcement about release or give people their money back. One of the two, because you're talking about $100, $100 deposit on a Founders Edition. And it sold out like within minutes. I was lucky enough to get on and get one, but it sold out. So I don't know how many copies they sold of Founders Editions, but it was a lot of money. So, and they've had that money ever since. And when I did that was about a month ago. And they said, oh, well, there's going to be an announcement coming. Just be patient. There's an announcement coming before the end of the month, which was January. It came out like yesterday or day before, which is beginning of February. And it's a trailer. And it's called the Intellivision Family Trailer or something like that. And it's basically an ad. Again, just saying what it's going to be and how it's going to be fun to sit down with your family and play on the console and all this other shit. And then at the end, they talk about investors and all this other shit again. And it sounds like it's just a phishing attempt to get more investors to put more money into it, or whatever. And boy, did the Facebook threads blow up with people saying, are you shitting me? You still don't have a release date now? This was just like Christmas Story, a crummy commercial. I mean, that's what the big announcement was, And so people are really getting up in arms about it. And now they're saying, oh, those that ordered Founders Editions, there's going to be another announcement before the end of this month, meaning February. So it's the dangling carrot, of, oh, there's the shiny thing over there. We'll go try to catch that shiny thing, and keep leading you along, And it's like, I don't know what's going to happen with this. I don't know if there's going to end up being a class action lawsuit, because this was not a Kickstarter. This was not crowdfunding. This was them saying, hey, if you want to pre-order a collector's edition or a Founders Edition, you got to send us $100 via PayPal, and you get a receipt, the whole bit. It's all documented, so you're set. You've got your deposit in, and then when it comes out, it releases, you pay the other $100, and you get a Founders Edition for $200. And it was like, right on. Sounds like a great plan. And they had a business plan. They had they already had hardware, and it looked great. And it's like, okay, yeah, we're in. That was probably the last thing I pre-ordered, and it'll probably be the last thing I ever pre-ordered. Because since that time, 2, 3, 4 years ago, whatever it was, I've already come up with saying that I'm not going to pre-order shit anymore. So, anyway, that's the update. They're still stringing us along. I don't know if any of you are in the same boat as I am of having put out $100 to get a Founders Edition, but that's where we're at. How do you guys feel about that? If you're involved or just as a spectator, how do you feel about it? I told you there was a lot of shit for me to talk about today. So, anyway, we're coming up 24 minutes. I gotta cut this thing now. That's it, guys. Please let me know. Leave any comments below. Oh, by the way, I did not get any questions on the Dahlmanwood campaign. I generally will answer them in the Beer 30. There were no questions, so no answers. Alrighty. We will catch you guys on the flip side.